Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I let you know what I've thought about them, and we always start with a pick of the week. But before we get into that, this is the last week for open nominations at the CBC Awards. That's the Comic Book Community Awards. We won a lot last year, so we want to be able to defend these awards. So if you feel so inclined, go to the link below. It's cbcawards.org and nominate any YouTuber that you feel is who you want to nominate for either category. But we do want your consideration for favorite channel, for best comic book review, for best ongoing series with the weekly comic book review, for best live show with Rockin' Robbie Live, for best collaboration with the monthly comic book review, and of course comic book community channel of the year. But vote for whoever you want to, but you have till Saturday to do it, so get those nominations in right now. They will announce the finalists towards the end of the month, and then we are officially in the award seasons. Alright, so now we're going to kick it off with the pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week, Kaya, issue number 20. Every time this book comes out, I talk about how it's one of the most undersung, underappreciated books out there. And if this was a book at, say, like Marvel or DC or something like that, it definitely would have already been on the chopping block. But since it's Image, it's like an independent title, right? Image distributes it, but Wes Craig is the one putting it all together, and he does so magnificently well. Story, art, and design, joined by Jason Wordie on the coloring. This is such an amazing book. It's a pretty solid week this week, and a lot of shops are going to be getting extra copies of Kaya, and if your shop gets extra copies of Kaya, it's up to them what they want to do with it, but if they are giving a discount or giving them away, definitely check it out. This is the start of a brand new arc, and at the end of the last arc, Kaya made a really crazy decision that I did not see coming, that took me through a loop, that spun me around and made me rethink my love for this main character, but not really, right? Because this story is so excellently crafted and it's filled with that nuance. Not everything is cut and dry. Not everything is black and white. There are shades of gray in this world. There are mistakes that are made by heroes. There are heroic moves made by villains. And this is just such a fully realized and imagined world. The artwork is exceptional. The concepts, the ideas are exceptional. The core of the story, the heart of the characters, it is exceptional. Everything about this book just absolutely soars. Wes Craig is doing the work of his career here, and I don't see a lot of traction on this book. I know people read it, I know people love it, but it ain't quite like other books out there. Y'all, this is like on the level of Jeff Smith's Bone, right? I feel very much the same kind of, it's not a story like Bone, but just how Bone is a very important kind of all-ages book. I think Kaya is the same thing happening before our very eyes right now. And once again, kicking off a new arc, 20 issues in, and still kicking ass and taking names. That's Kaya by Wes Craig from Image Comics, and it is your pick of the week. We got a new one from Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard. It's the Power Fantasy, issue number 1 out this week from Image Comics. It's a pretty solid issue. It was all right. I would have liked a little bit more flair to it, a little bit more energy in the book. I mean, it's good. The artwork by Casper Wingard is great, but for the most part, it's just a bunch of people sitting around talking. Now, I know Department of Truth is the same thing, and I always have nice things to say about that, and mostly because of the artwork by Martin Simmons. Well, Casper is one of my favorite artists as well, and I love this, but he's just not able to really do anything super crazy. There are moments in the book where it can flow a little bit, has a little bit more action. I'm sure that's to come, but it's a pretty decent setup. The idea is this: there are only a handful of superpowered individuals in this world, and they all kind of have to make this pact about like what to do in this world, how to guide it, how to shape it, and these people have been kind of guiding and shaping this world for decades, but the governments are still there, and what if the governments want to kind of make a stand against these heroes? Then these heroes have to factionalize and break apart. It's very much like the Wicked and the Divine. That was probably another thing. Casper Wingard's artwork was great, but the story didn't allow him to really do anything dynamic, right? And the story itself, it's got some cool ideas, but it is just kind of exposition. It is just kind of like Wicked and the Divine. It's like a very similar concept, but with superheroes. But, you know, I really do trust Gillen, and I do trust Wingard for certain. So I do think that this book is going to flourish and develop into something a little bit more substantial, a little bit more exciting to me. But right now, it was okay, it was decent, it was solid, but I need more out of this book. I need more dynamicness to it, and I need more than just people sitting around talking. I love Wicked and the Divine, but I don't want this book to just be like that with a superhero skin, if that makes sense. Anyway, the Power Fantasy, I thought it was pretty decent. Then we got Scarlett here with issue number 3. Scarlett has been my least favorite of the Energon universe so far, and I think it's mostly because of the artwork. And I'm not saying that Marco Ferrari is a bad artist. He's not. He does really well with the action scenes at times, too. There's something about the line work that doesn't work for me. Like I said, the sense of movement and the sense of action, that's pretty cool in it, but there's something about the line work that just doesn't quite work for me, mostly on the faces. It's all right, right? But the story's decent. It's okay. Scarlett is trying to infiltrate the Arashikage, right? So she's there because Jinx is one of her best friends. That's an interesting dynamic, and I like seeing that blossom and flourish. Blossom's probably the wrong word. I like seeing that being developed. I like seeing a more intense side of that. I guess it's cool, but it's all right. It doesn't have that wicked sense of fun that like Cobra Commander or Destro has, and it doesn't have like the pure high octane and solid line work from Tom Riley that Duke had, right? But Scarlett's been pretty decent, and even saying it's my least favorite of the Energon books, it's still better than most of the comics I read, so I like it. Ain't No Grave is here with issue number 4. This is mostly a silent issue, I know. All comics are silent, except for that Godzilla and King Kong book that they did that you opened it up and it would scream at you. Those comics weren't silent. Yeah, every comic's silent. They don't talk to you. There's not audio or anything like that. But what I mean is a wordless comic. This is mostly a wordless comic, which cements the whole purpose of this book. It is about a woman who finds out she's dying. This is like a Western, so it's like an Old West kind of approach, but with a fantastical element to it. So she decides she ain't having that. She's got a partner. She's got a daughter. She's got people to protect. So she goes out to find death, to kill death so that she doesn't die. I guess that kind of makes sense, right? But this is mostly a spotlight on Jorge Corona's artwork. And that's exactly what this issue is. Being wordless, there's no reason not to deny the power of Jorge Corona as a storyteller. This entire issue may feel a little bit fast to some people, but I feel like it's got some really great concepts and ideas in it, but just allowing Jorge Corona to just give us a masterclass in comic book storytelling, that's what this is. It leads up to a fever-pitched moment to set up, I believe, the finale of this series. I think it may only be 5 issues. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm really liking this book, mostly anchored by Jorge Corona's amazing artwork. Then we got The Deviant here, issue number 7, a really great issue of The Deviant. This has been a fun book, a little bit of a slow burn, but I'm actually really enjoying this slow burn from James Tynion IV with artwork by Joshua Hickson, Hassan Otsman El Howe on the lettering. There's this nice little bit here where this detective has to go and find information about where the killer's mask would be from. There's this woman who's like super obsessed with the serial killer and the mask and all that stuff. There's a conversation with our main character's boyfriend and the accused killer from back in the 70s that I really found a lot of nuance in. I love the coloring, sickly greens when there needs to be there, and then an ending that's really cool. This is really great, just psychological thriller. You could see this being like a psychological thriller movie in the 90s or the early 2000s, or hell, even today. The Deviant has been cool. Takes a while to come out, slowing up some of its momentum a little bit, but issues like this really cement why I like this book. Public Domain is here with issue number 7. And I'll be honest, even though Public Domain came back with issue number 6 in a pretty interesting way, continuing what happened at the end of the first arc, which is basically, Public Domain is about the superhero named the Domain that a writer and an artist created. It was a big deal. They split apart. The writer has turned it into a giant franchise. They're making billions of dollars off of it. But the artist is, broke, doesn't really have much money and all that stuff. There's a big legal battle that ensues, and they wind up both getting the rights to the character to do whatever they want. So he, with his children, are trying to make their own version of the domain. And in the last issue, we get introduced to this new writer and this new editor, and the idea of trying to make a comic book based on a legacy hero, on something that a lot of people love and have an attachment to, but do it for a modern audience, change it, why we need to change it, things like that. And going against those changes, that's being developed here. And then there's also the introduction of this dude who's a writer in the Alan Moore, Grant Morrison kind of vein, where maybe they take superheroes a bit too serious, and it's just a hoot. This is definitely this is a book that is definitely for fans of comic books and comic book writers and comic book artists and comic book writers and comic book artists and comic books behind the scenes. Like, if you know the history of comics, you're going to find a lot to appreciate in this book, and I think Chip Zdarsky's doing a really solid job of keeping me interested in this book that most people probably wouldn't be able to. So public domain, I'm still liking it. The Scorch is here with issue number 32. The Scorch now have to go up against Jessica Priest, who used to be their leader, but now she's been turned by Jason Wynn, and this is the big fight, the big battle. I really appreciated it. I think that since John Layman has come on, this book has really, stepped it up a little bit, right? Haunt goes crazy, starts murking people like crazy. We got Overkill coming back, and Jessica Priest as the villain. You know there's going to be something coming out of that, but so far, so good. The Scorched I'm having fun with. Gunslinger Spawn, issue number 34. I think Gunslinger Spawn has taken a little bit of a dive since Brett Booth left, right? Barbaria's come on, and the art's fine, but it's this new sidekick. I'm just not vibing with that, right? But this issue is Gunslinger Spawn gets captured, and it's about the police reacting to his presence and what he is, and a little bit more about his path to vengeance. So it was pretty solid. It was all right, but I tell you something really crazy about this issue of Gunslinger Spawn. So about a year and a half ago, a buddy of mine goes, "Hey man, here's this Gunslinger Spawn blank cover I have. Would you draw a Gunslinger Spawn on there for me in his new costume?" Because it was the issue, I think, where he got his new costume. And I'm like, sure, I'll do that. And then, y'all, it took me like a year until I was able to do it, right? It took me like a year. I finally sat down, I did it. I kind of rushed through it, but I wanted to make sure he could get his book because I'd had it for so long. Same thing with the blank covers at Dynamite. This dude sent it in, and here in the back is my freaking Gunslinger Spawn commission that this dude, I did it for free because he's a homie of mine, but there it is right there. So if you read Gunslinger Spawn, there's Rockin' Robbie. It even says, commissioned artwork from Robbie Billups. And y'all, I could have done better, but I was kind of rushing through it. I didn't know it was going to be in the back pages of Gunslinger Spawn. But there it is. So I guess I can call myself Gunslinger Spawn artist. There's my first published artwork. So let's jump over to Marvel, where we have Uncanny X-Men issue number 1, From the Ashes, A New Beginning. This is Gail Simone and David Marquez on Uncanny X-Men. Matt Wilson on the coloring. This is the team that I think a lot of people have been more excited about because it's Rogue and Gambit and Wolverine, mostly in this first issue, but I know that Jubilee's supposed to get involved, maybe Nightcrawler. I liked it. I thought it was fine. I thought the art was cool. I've always liked David Marquez. I think Matt Wilson's a good colorist. And Gail Simone is hit or miss with me. Sometimes I like her work, sometimes I don't, but it's not because I think she's a bad writer. Sometimes I just don't vibe with the story or the characters, right? I liked it. I thought it was good. In fact, out of all of the From the Ashes stuff, this has been my favorite. It feels more like the start of a new X-Men book and less more like a continuation of the after effects from Krakoa. Yeah, there's elements of that here, but for the most part, it's Gambit, Rogue, and Wolverine being Gambit, Rogue, and Wolverine in a typical kind of X-Men scenario. There's a dragon. I appreciated that. That was cool. I liked it. I thought the art was cool. It had great action, had great characterization. It was setting up some interesting stuff with the new villain, where it looks like they're making the X-Mansion, the former X-Mansion, like a prison for mutants or something. So that's interesting. Kind of interesting dichotomy with like Cyclops in the X-Men book taking like a Sentinel plant and turning it into their new headquarters. But I liked it. I thought it was good. I liked the art. I liked the story. I think the characterization was spot on. Heck yeah, Uncanny X-Men, I liked it. Venom War, issue number 1. So, I quit reading Venom a while ago, and this is written by Al Ewing. This is, I think, his big Venom finale. The Venom finale. This is the big Venom finale. And it's got artwork by Iban Coelho. Artwork is fine. I don't know. Even though I haven't been following the book, I can piece together what's going on. Eddie's crazy. He storms into this wrestling match or something. Everybody sees him. Dylan's out there without the symbiote. Symbiote has to seek out Peter Parker. A lot of this is also just like revisiting the origin of the symbiote and all that kind of stuff. And Dylan's got this vision of the future. It wasn't bad. It was all right. I completely lost interest in Venom with all the crazy timey-wimey stuff. I will say this. The book had a nice flow to it. The art was fine. I wasn't bored while I was reading it, but I was reading it and I was like, man, Al Ewing's Venom book went really wild, didn't it? I don't think I missed out. Did I miss out? Y'all let me know. But Venom War #1, it's all right. It's got a lot of cheese in it, but it's got some decent stuff in it, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's not boring, but it's kind of just weird. It's a weird concept. Really is. Like, Eddie Brock's gone like all rogue again, and he shows up with all these different versions of him from the time stream, and he's all like, yo, we're wrecking shit at this wrestling ring. Venom War. What? Okay, that's fine. Blood Hunters, issue #1. Why? Because Blood Hunt ended. You gotta... The thing that would change... I mean, there's a lot of ramifications from Blood Hunt, actually. Anyway, Blood Hunters is a team of people out there still fighting these vampires. Since the end of Blood Hunt, vampires in the Marvel Universe can now... They're all daywalkers. They can walk during the day. So there's got to be a specific dedicated team to hunting down the vampire threat. It's Dagger, it's Bloodstone, it's White Widow, and Miles Morales, who's still a vampire. They did this with Jubilee, and they had to undo it. Anyway, I digress. The issue, it was alright. The artwork was kind of sloppy. It was alright. The book itself was okay. Had a fun ending. I mean, it didn't suck. It was okay. It was decent, I guess. Then we got Spider-Man Black Suit and Blood, issue #1. A new anthology. You know, Marvel and other companies like to do that black, white, and red kind of colored, dedicated anthology books. That's what this is with Spider-Man, but all involving the black suit, so black, white, and red. Get it? It's all right. So the opening story is by J.M. DeMatteis and Alina Casagrande, and it was all right. Like, if you like J.M. DeMatteis, you're going to like that story. The second story by Alyssa Wong with artwork by Fran Galan. I really did like this one. It's mostly just exploring Mary Jane's fear of the symbiote costume, but the art was really solid in there. Some really cool bits showing like terror and fear and the madness that's developing within. Then you got Dustin Nguyen doing the same thing, the same story, but from Peter's perspective, basically. But the art was great. The coloring was solid. I really liked the ending on that one. Then the last story is by J. Michael Straczynski with artwork by Sumit Kumar. I really liked Sumit's artwork. I think it was great. The story was kind of boring and every story kind of did the same thing. It was alright. I probably won't come back for another one. Then we've got Avengers here with issue #17. I quit reading Avengers early in the Jed MacKay run. Just wasn't vibing with it, but I wanted to cover this one because this is a big issue. A lot of people are going to be picking it up because Storm joins the Avengers here. Having read this issue, I liked this issue. I thought it was solid. It's aftermath type stuff from Blood Hunt. Carol and some of the rest of the Avengers are questioning if they did enough, if they're worthy of being called Avengers, what they can do to stop things like Blood Hunt from even starting. And then there is the bit where somebody asks Storm to join the Avengers. Now, we know that Storm will join the Avengers, at least for a time, and it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting thing to see explored, but I liked this issue. I thought it was fine. Even though I've missed, like, probably the last 10 or so issues of this book, I was able to go right along with it and enjoy it, and I might keep reading this book from now on because it didn't suck. It's written by Jed MacKay, so no reason why it should suck, like Doctor Strange #18, which doesn't suck. But the sucky thing about this issue is this is Jed MacKay's final issue of Doctor Strange. I have loved his Doctor Strange run. He started with the death of Doctor Strange, wasn't his fault. He had to do the Clea book, wasn't his fault. But once he got to actually do a proper Doctor Strange book, I loved it. This is a great one because it's about Stephen reflecting on who he is and his responsibilities, especially after the effects in the aftermath of Blood Hunt. I don't really want to spoil it yet if you don't know, but Doctor Strange relinquished his power to someone, and he feels really regretful about that. But this was just a great exploration and nice capstone to Jed MacKay's really solid run on Doctor Strange. Pascal Ferry on the artwork. It's going to be sad to see this team break apart and not do Doctor Strange anymore, but we'll see what happens after that. Then we got SpiderMan Reign, issue number 2. SpiderMan Reign 2, issue number 2 from Kari Andrews. Really liked this book. I just recently, finally, for the first time, read all of SpiderMan Reign and loved it. So it's so weird, though, that they're returning to this world, to this story. It's an alternate future where Mary Jane dies of cancer given to her by the radioactive body fluids from Spider-Man during things like sex. Radioactive jizz. That's what it is. All right, so Spider-Man Reign 2 is continuing that story. It takes place several years after the first story, and there's even a little bit of time travel that's going on here, and some really interesting concepts, and Reign versions of characters that haven't been done yet that are explored here that I really like. So I thought this was really cool. I love Kari Andrews' style. I love that he's got a couple of McFarlane homages in here. And the first Spider-Man Reign really leaned into its influence from The Dark Knight Returns. This one doesn't. It doesn't do that, and I actually appreciate that it doesn't. It's doing something different stylistically, it's doing something different story-wise, and it's doing something different structurally, and I really do appreciate that. I'm having a lot of fun with this book. So a little bit of a time travel story, but also set in the world of Spider-Man Reign. Really exciting stuff. So that was cool. Then we've got Ultimate Black Panther issue number 7. This is one of my favorite issues of Ultimate Black Panther yet. A lot of people have said that this book's a little bit too much of a slow burn and there's not a lot of action. This book has that deliberate, determined pace that Brian Hill's been doing throughout all 7 of these issues, and has a lot of great action sequences as well. I'm really enjoying this book. It's starting to differentiate itself from the typical 616 Black Panther, and it's been doing that over the last several issues, but I think this book has tightened up on its mission statement. I think it's tightened up on its characterization. It's really always been tight with its structure, and I really like the way Brian Hill structures his stories. It's very methodical and deliberate, but at the same time, dynamic and kinetic, and that's something that we're getting in the pages of Ultimate Black Panther, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Plus, we're getting a little bit more pushed in on the lore and the mythology behind Vibranium. I'm all here for it. Let's jump over to DC. And from DC, we have Gotham City Sirens, issue number 1, first part of a, I believe, weekly 4-issue series with Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, and a villain who has been already kind of spoiled on the covers, but I'm not going to spoil that for you. It was alright, it's okay. It's written by Leah Williams. I'm not typically a big Leah Williams fan, though I did like her Exterminators book, even though it fell apart a little bit. Now, I feel like she's trying to infuse the same energy from her Exterminators book in here by having it be a fun, wild, as she would call it, slightly transgressive approach, but that's not really what's happening here. It's alright, it's kind of just big, dumb, silly fun, but it didn't really quite land for me like Exterminators did. Exterminators, I think, had a little bit of better art, too. I mean, the artwork's fine here. I don't know, it's just alright, but it just didn't quite vibe with me. It was just okay, but for the most part, Leah Williams doesn't really resonate with me as a writer, but if she does with you, then maybe you want to check this one out. There was a Gotham City Sirens book before, with like artwork by Gilliam March, that was written by Paul Dini. I think there was a little bit more substance to that one. This one doesn't really have that, but it did have kind of an interesting end and a take on how this whole situation is being put together. I thought it was just kind of alright. Then we've got Absolute Power, issue number 2. Feels like we've had a myriad of tie-ins before we finally got into issue number 2 of Absolute Power, but man, this was awesome. This was really freaking cool. Why? Dan Mora's artwork, right? So Amanda Waller has made an army of a Justice League of Amazo robots, each one representing a core member of the Justice League. They're out there stealing all the heroes' powers. They cut off the magic users' ties to magic. They cut off the technology. And the heroes are in a desperate situation, and the scale and the scope of that is actually shown in the artwork and in the story. All the heroes get together at the Fortress of Solitude to kind of like band together and form a plan, and then shit hits the fan, and it hits the fan big time. Emotionally for some of these characters, physically for some of these characters, and mentally for some of these characters. Dan Mora's artwork is a treat. absolutely glorious. This is what you want for big, bombastic, superhero, explosive action, and just really interesting concepts here. I love the idea that Batman's got like suits already prepared for the Justice League in case something like this ever happens. Superman gets put through the ringer in this one. All kinds of ways. I really like this book. I thought this was a super solid issue. Issue number 1 I liked as well, but not as much as issue number 2. And it's rare for an event to ramp up for me in issue number 2 over issue number 1. So I thought that was cool. Then we got Batman 151 Absolute Power tie-in. I didn't like this one. So Batman, this is the Batman's mission that gets set up here in issue number 2 of Absolute Power. Batman has got to go and steal a mother box from Amanda Waller. He's joined by Catwoman. Makes sense. The problem is, this story is just clunky. The dialogue and the chemistry between Selina and Bruce is just kind of off. The pacing of it is a little off-kilter, just kind of jarring. And the artwork by Mike Hawthorne is a bit static and just not exciting at all. This was... It wasn't good. I didn't like this. I didn't think it was good. In fact, I think Chip Zdarsky's Batman is not good. There are moments where it is good, usually when Jorge Corona does something awesome. But honestly, right now, I think I can say, not a fan of Chip Zdarsky's Batman run. And I get that this is a tie-in. Those are hard to do, especially in the midst of whatever you're trying to do. But this was all over the place. Did not work for me. Kneel Before Zod, issue number 8, though, this worked for me. This is the final issue of the series, and the whole point of this series, and we had a conversation with Joe Casey about the point of this series, so check out that conversation if you're more interested. But he said, Zod seemed like he was a shadow of the Zod that I grew up with, whether it's from Superman 2 or even from some of the comics. He wanted to bring Zod back to a truly villainous, menacing, and threatening level to Superman. So in 8 issues, Joe Casey has taken Zod from this weird place that he was in the DC Universe back to a legitimate threat that is scary and awesome and badass. And Zod is one of my favorite characters. I think Terrence Stamp's Zod might be my favorite comic book movie villain of all time. And that's where we're at here now. We're at that. We're at that point where Zod is exactly where he should be. And ever since they brought Zod back, ever since it was Richard Donner and Jeff Johns worked on that book with I think it was Adam Kubert, they brought Zod back in, and it just never quite clicked right? It's clicking right now. Joe Casey has done it, and these 8 issues are a tribute to one of the greatest villains that should be present in Superman's life, and it's Zod. And the work that's been done in just 8 short issues, wow. Also, big Zod and Sinestro fight here that's pretty BA. Pretty BA. Then we got The Boy Wonder, issue number 4, the final issue of this DC Black Label series from Junie Baugh and Chris O'Halloran. This is the Damian-centric book. So each one of these stories is Damian, a story of Damian, Bruce Wayne's son, Damian Wayne, Robin. It's a story of him teaming up with a different Robin. So each issue is kind of focused on him dealing with his legacy through the Robins. First one's about Dick Grayson. The second one's about Jason Todd. Third one's about Tim Drake. This one's about Damian, and it wraps it all up. And it does it fantastically well. This might be the best issue of the series yet. The artwork is amazing, and the way that Ra's al Ghul is portrayed is absolutely freaking awesome. Let me show you some cool scenes. And just the striking graphic nature of this story. And then the coloring by Chris O'Halloran is great. But look just the way that the faceless Ra's al Ghul, the accentuated aspect of the style and the line work, it's just so freaking masterful. This was great. This was a great final issue of Boy Wonder. This is going to be a really solid evergreenish type book about the Robins, the Robin legacy, and why Damian is special, unique, and significant. So there you go. All right, from Oni Press, we got EC Comics presenting Cruel Universe. So we already had Epitaphs from the Abyss. Now we have Cruel Universe. Epitaphs from the Abyss was like the horror comic. This is the sci-fi comic, but still very much in the horror vein. I will tell you this. I love this cover by Greg Smallwood. It gets the cover of the week. By the way, before I forget, the smell of the week was Deviant. Deviant number 7 is the smell of the week. It smells like Christmas and Murder, which I really, really like. So cover of the week goes to Greg Smallwood right there for The Cruel Universe. I mean, find a dinosaur, right? My thoughts about Epitaphs from the Abyss, about how EC to me was always about great art and then solid story, and how I felt like Epitaphs from the Abyss kind of missed that mark. I feel like they miss it here too. Art's okay. It's okay. It's like, I want more. I don't know, what do I want? I want more. I want different art. I want gnarly art. I want art that's trying to do something different. I want art that, even though it's doing a good job of telling the story, and there is like the last story in here has solid art, but I'm still disappointed in the artwork. But the stories I liked a lot better than in the first one. So the first story is written by Matt Kent. It's about this dude who winds up on this planet, and it's basically like a gladiator type story. The second one was my favorite story, and it's a story about this dude who is exploring this black hole, and he finds a ship there with a dead woman. He falls in love with her, and then tries to use time travel shenanigans or something. The third story that had some decent artwork, it was all right. It's about one of these billionaires that's trying to spend all of his money like to de-age himself and figure out how to live forever, and he's looking for the fountain of youth, and it had an okay ending, I guess. And then the final story was all right. The story I didn't really like, but the art I liked much more. So I don't know, it was all right. It's fine. I had high hopes for the series. I'm not saying that I hate it, but I'm saying I wish that with better art, like get some of the best artists out there and let them write and draw their own stories. That's what I would do. If I was leading a revival of EC, I would go after Eric Powell. I'd go after Jim Mahfood. I would go after people that do interesting, unique, cool art, old school and new school. I'd go after them, and I'd let them do their own thing. I wouldn't have a writer assigned to an artist or an artist assigned to a writer. I would just let artists do their own thing. Let them cook. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, what's his name? I've met him, Mike Norton. Get Mike Norton to do a story. See what he does. Get Kelly Williams to do a story. See what he does. Get Liana Kangas to do a story. See what they do. That's Hayden Sherman. You see what I'm saying? That's the vibe I would go with, and I think that's the way to go with EC. Over at Boom Studios, we got Red Before Black, issue number 1, a new one from Stephanie Phillips and Goran Zuzuka. I thought this one was all right, actually. It's about this woman who just got out of prison. She goes to, I think, maybe an old flame or an old friend or something. She's like, hey, I need a job. He's like, what, you want to work at my bar? She goes, no, I know what you do. Don't act like I don't. And so he goes, all right, well, I need you to kill this woman. But it turns out maybe she doesn't want to kill this woman, but it's a reckless woman who stole a bunch of cocaine from him and is now trying to sell it. It's kind of like in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, where dude's like, you telling me these dudes broke into your place to steal my weed, and now they're trying to sell my weed back to me? It's like the same thing, but with cocaine. But there's a different element to it that I don't want to spoil, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty solid, pretty light read, interesting. I'm excited to see where it develops. Space Ghost is here with issue number 4. Y'all, David Pepose is killing it with Space Ghost. Absolutely fantastic issue. This is the issue that Zorak appears, and Zorak has never been more scary or terrifying in my life. This iteration of Zorak is cold-blooded, murder cult, awesome. I freaking love it. And Space Ghost goes off, finds out Zorak's breaking out of prison or whatever. He leaves the kids alone. He's like, don't follow me. This guy's too dangerous. And just like any story of that way, they find themselves in danger. You know what I'm saying? But great action scenes with Space Ghost. Like I said, what really was impressing me was this really cool characterization of Zorak, which was truly threatening and scary. The action was big. The story is super solid. The art's good. The coloring at times can be a bit too orangey for me. Aside from that, I'm really, really liking Space Ghost, and a grim and gritty reboot of Space Ghost. And David Pepose and Jonathan Lau are making it work, and making it work very well. So that's super cool. Thundercats Chitara is here with issue number 2, written by Sue Lee, who I think is a fantastic writer and artist, with Domenico Carboni on the art. The art's okay. The art could be a little bit better. In fact, I would prefer it if Sue Lee would have done this herself, because there's Sue Lee's cover, which is amazing. But it's like a prequel to the Thundercats series. It's Chitara on Thundera, kind of having these doubts about the future of their world and these premonitions about something bad about to happen. So it's not really developing out her character too much, and it's not really telling us anything that we don't already know. But it's still a nice, fun read. Suli's got a great pace to her panels, to her story. She's got a great pace with her dialogue. Her dialogue's very snappy. I think she's really, really good at that. So Thundercats Chitara, diving a little bit deeper, but it could dive a little bit deeper, but we're only 2 issues in, so we'll see what happens. From Magma, we have the Pedestrian, issue number 1, Joey Esposito, Sean Von Gorman. I don't know about this one. It was all right. It's so weird. All right. It's a bunch of different chapters, a bunch of different stories of these people interacting with this superhero named the Pedestrian. Like in the first bit, this dude's trying to get this woman, kill her, steal from her, assault her, something like that. He shows up, starts chasing the dude, but then the traffic light goes to no walking, and he just stops and lets the dude get away. He doesn't speak, and all the stories are connected, and they kind of connect in interesting ways. But I'm really confused about what's going on with this Pedestrian character. But I think that's the whole point of it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. It was all right. It was decent. I'm not in it enough to say, oh man, y'all must check this book out, Sleeper Hit of the Week, or anything like that. But it was compelling. So we'll see what happens as it develops. Then we've got, from Dark Horse, Prodigy, Slaves of Mars, Mark Millar, Stefano Landini, or Mark Miller, however you want to say it, if you're nasty. Prodigy is a book that I always start and never finish the runs, right? But since we did the big game and all that kind of stuff, and Nemesis and everything's been connected, I figured I'd check this out, and it's really good. I liked it. So our main character, Prodigy, he's like a super genius, super high intellect. There have been things that have slipped his attention, probably because of a supervillain. We get some backstory on his family here. Just a really interesting setup. Prodigy starts losing everything, and he has to turn to somebody who he never wants to turn to again, and that's what's happening. But I thought it was pretty solid, pretty decent. I did like Prodigy when it first came out, but like I said, I never really continued on with it. Like, each time there's a new volume, I'd read it for a couple issues and then dip out. Will it happen again? I don't know. We'll see. All right, based on the board game, we got Arkham Horror, The Terror at the End of Time. This is written by Cullen Bunn with Andrea Muti on the artwork. It's some of the more sloppy and rushed artwork I've ever seen from Muti. I usually like his work, but this one was just kind of, it was just all right. Maybe because he didn't color himself. Colors are by Valerio Aloro. I don't know, it's all right. It's decent. It's just about this woman who hires a private detective to find out what happened to her friend, part of this ritual, this cult, Cthulhu, Lovecraftian, Outer Gods type stuff. It was all right. It was decent. You know, if you're a super hardcore Arkham horror fan, and I like that game a lot. Like, I still have my copy. We used to play it a lot. Complex game. Very difficult to win. But this was all right. It was okay. I mean, it scratched that Lovecraft itch I have. You know, every once in a while it needs to be scratched. Or a giant... Never mind. I don't know where I was going with that. Then we got Kanto, A Place Like Home, issue number 3. This is the final arc of Kanto. It's been a long time coming, but it's been worth it. Everything is clicking together. All the moments have been prepared and set up, and now all the dominoes are falling in this epic conclusion to what has been a heartfelt, sad, and tragic, but truly inspirational, heroic epic involving the little knight who could. You know what I'm saying? Who just tried to save his loved one, lost that loved one, found more friends, found community, found joy, found suffering, found loss, found success, found hope, and hopefully finds a really great ending. But right now we are really leaning towards a really masterful ending, and I cannot wait till the day I get to sit down and read Kanto from the beginning to the end, all complete. That's going to be the day. Then we got The Goon here with Them That Don't Stay Dead, issue number 2. It's been a while since issue number 1, so I almost didn't want to read this because I didn't think I'd be able to jump right back in, but I did. In the first issue, the Goon meets a woman at the bar. They start bumping uglies. She immediately gets got. So now Goon is on a mission to try to find out what happened to her. Meanwhile, a threat from the past has been resurrected. Pretty cool stuff. Eric Powell's artwork is great. The black and white with the wash looks spectacular. But if you like Goon, you're going to get what you like. Crude, rude silliness, but at the same time, anchored and weighted by a serious love of horror and pulp comics. The Goon is exceptional. And look at that Jim Mahfood cover. That's fantastic. Also out today is the Gods trade paperback. So Marvel actually sent me the 8 issues of Gods a couple months ago. I read them, and I talked about them here on the weekly comic book review, and I talked about them on Rockin' Robbie Live. I never put together a video. A lot of stuff happened in my life over the last couple months, and so it just was hard to do. But I just wanted to be here to tell you, thank you to Marvel for allowing me to read this again before this trade came out, because it helped me recontextualize what that series was. And what the series is as I was reading it, right? As I was reading Gods, I felt this seems so epic, these crazy cosmic ramifications, but it just doesn't feel like it's hitting it. I don't understand. Reading it all together, like, for instance, in this trade, I would highly recommend that. Because if you're a Hickman fan, if you're a Marvel fan, definitely check it out. Because, yes, this is Hickman playing with the idea of cosmology in the Marvel Universe. He is redefining, like, the role of these cosmic forces and these entities, and he's creating these new groups and all this kind of stuff. And that is big and bombastic and cosmic. But the story is a love story. It's about this dude and his lover who are on opposite sides of this cosmological war. And even though it feels, I mean, that's the epic nature of this, right? Is that even when we're talking about the end of all things, we're talking about the in-betweener and Lord Chaos and Lord Order, we're talking about Eternia. No, not Eternia. We're talking about eternity. We're talking about the great living tribunal, right? We're talking about all this heavy cosmic stuff. But the most important, the most cosmic and giant thing is a love story. And it's wonderful, actually. It's like, as above, so below. Like, all this turmoil in the universe, all this turmoil in two individuals' lives. That, to me, is profound and brilliant. And I didn't realize it until I read it all in one sitting. Marvel allowed that to happen, so y'all go do me a favor. Go read this book. Shout out Marvel. Let them know that you like the book. Let them know you heard about the book from me, Rockin' Robbie Bills. All right, so that's what I got. That's what I read. So let's recap. The Goon stays the Goon, which is awesome. Kanto is setting up for a truly epic finale. Arkham Horror was just all right. Prodigy was pretty solid, but will it keep my attention? The Pedestrian, not quite sold on it yet, but not unsold either. Chitara could dive a little bit deeper into the character, but it's still doing what I need it to do. Space Ghost is so freaking awesome, and Zorak is so freaking scary. Red Before Black was intriguing. I'm excited for more. Cruel Universe needs to focus more on the art. Just like Epitaphs from Above. Get Junie Baugh to do Cruel Universe or something. Get people like Junie Baugh. Anyway, Boy Wonder was a fantastic finale. Kneel Before Zod. Zod is back to being where Zod should be. Thank you, Joe Casey. And Dan McDade. Thank you all so much. Batman, did not like it. Absolute Power, absolutely loved it. Gotham City Sirens just wasn't quite for me. Ultimate Black Panther, one of the best issues yet. SpiderMan Reign 2, issue number 2. Fan-frickin-tastic. Doctor Strange, the end of Jed McKay's run, but an epic finale. Really liked it. A really great exploration, I should say. Avengers number 17. Storm joins, and so does Robbie. Robbie joins Avengers. Spider-Man, Black Suit and Blood. It wasn't for me. Maybe it'll be for you. Blood Hunters was alright. Kind of sloppy, but, you know, whatever. Venom War, it wasn't boring, but it was dumb. Things can be dumb and fun. Uncanny X-Men I liked. My favorite of the From the Ashes post-Krakoan books so far. Gunslinger Spawn 34. The book is okay, but check it out because your boy's got his artwork in there. That's pretty dope. Scorched is here. I'm really liking this book. I think it's improved since John Layman came on. Public Domain. I love this book. I almost didn't read it. Glad I did. Deviant gets the smell of the week. Also just a really great, solid psychological thriller, serial killer type thing. Christmas theme too, so that's nice. And the smell of the week, I can smell it right now. Ain't No Grave is a masterclass in storytelling in the comic book form from Jorge Corona. Scarlett, it's the weakest of the Energon books, but it's still solid and it's more solid than most of the things out there. Power Fantasy could have been a little bit more dynamic. Aside from that, I guess it had some pretty solid ideas. But Kaya gets the pick of the week because Kaya do what Kaya always do, which is just be a great comic book. The design, the lettering, the layouts, the composition, the flow, the storytelling, the line work, the coloring, everything about this book slaps. Also, not a single bit of it is wasted. Not a single bit of it is wasted. This is great stuff. This is great stuff. Read Kaya. Anyway, that's what I read. That's what I thought. That's what I'm digging. What are you reading? What are you thinking? What are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading. Station, pop, pop, boom!